let's talk first a little, if we may, about your book, The Gutenberg Galaxy, where you argue that for a long time, without actually understanding it, we've been living in a culture in which our whole way of looking at the world has been determined by typography, by the successiveness of print and so on. Would you like to enlarge on that a bit?
Well, I remember I decided to write that book when I came across a piece by J.C. Carruthers, a psychiatrist, on the African mind in health and disease, describing the effects of the printed word on the African populations. It startled me and decided me to plunge in. But we have a better opportunity in seeing our old technologies when they confront other populations elsewhere in the world. The effects they have on those people are so startling and so sudden that we have an opportunity to see what happened to us over many centuries.
Yes, which we couldn't see because we're inside the system. Don't you say that what happened was that we got used to having our information processed as it is in print. That's to say, it's set out successively, whereas at the root of your thoughts, perhaps, there's the view that we can see the world as an image instantaneously, but that we've chosen, under the pressure of the technology, to set it out successively like a block of print.
Well, every technology has its own ground rules, as it were. It decides all sorts of arrangements in other spheres. The fact of script and the ability to make inventories and collect data and store data changed many social habits and processes back as early as 3000 BC. However, that's about as early as scripts began. The effects of rearranging one's experience, organizing one's experience by these new extensions of our powers, are quite unexpected. Perhaps one way of putting it is to say that writing represents a high degree of specializing of our powers.
Yes.
Compared to pre-literate societies, there is a considerable concentration on one faculty when you develop a skill like scripting.
And this is the visual, what you call the visual.
Yes, this is a highly specialized stress compared to anything in ordinary oral societies. There have been many studies made of this in various ways. But in our own Western world, the rise of the phonetic alphabet seems to have had much to do with Platonic culture and the ordering of experience in the terms of ideas, classifying of data and experience by ideas.
You mean that sight has become the preeminent sense, as it was for Plato, and it went on being so in so-called civilized as opposed to primitive
increasingly so.
With the climax with the invention of printing.
Printing stepped it up to a considerable pitch, yes.
How would you describe the impact of the invention of the printing press? Give us some instances of what happened as a consequence of this.
It created almost overnight, it created what we call nationalism, what in fact effect was a public. Old manuscript forms were not sufficiently powerful instruments of technology to create publics in the sense that print was able to do. Unified, homogeneous reading publics. Everything that we prize in our Western world in matters of individualism and separatism and of unique point of view, private judgment, all those factors are highly favored by the printed word and not really favored by other forms of culture like radio or earlier even by manuscript. But this stepping up of the fragmented, the private, the individual, the private judgment, the point of view, all, in fact, our whole vocabularies underwent huge change with the arrival of such technology.
Yes. Could I ask you now about the technology which, on your view, is superseding it and which is having its own effect on our lives, comparable with, but of course entirely different in kind to the Gutenberg
technology was mechanical to an extreme degree. In fact, it originated a good deal of the later mechanical revolution, assembly line style, and the fragmentation of operations and functions as the very rationale of industrialization.
Yes.
This fragmentation had begun much earlier with after the hunter and the food gatherers with Neolithic man. I suppose in an extreme way one might say that Gutenberg was the last phase of the Neolithic Revolution. Gutenberg plus the Industrial Revolution that followed was a pushing of specialism that came in with the Neolithic man, the Agrarian Revolution, a pushing of specialism all the way. And then suddenly we encounter the electric or electromagnetism, which seems to have a totally different principle. Is it, for some people feel, an extension of our nervous system, not an extension of merely of our bodies. If the wheel is an extension of feet and tools of hands, back, arms, the electromagnetism seems to be in its technological manifestations an extension of our nerves and becomes mainly an information system. It is above all a feedback or looped system. The peculiarity, you see, after the age of the wheel, you suddenly encounter the age of the circuit. The wheel pushed to an extreme suddenly acquires opposite characteristics. This seems to happen with a good many technologies, that if they get pushed to a very distant point, they reverse their characteristics.
What difference is the electric technology making to our interest in content, in what the medium actually says?
A very complex business, I'm sure, but one of the effects of switching over to circuitry from mechanical moving parts and wheels is an enormous increase in the amount of information that is moving. You cannot cope with vast amounts of information in the old fragmentary classified patterns. You tend to go looking for mythic and structural forms in order to manage such complex data and moving at very high speeds. So the electric engineers often speak of pattern recognition as a normal need of people processing data electrically and by computers and so on. Need for pattern recognition. It's a need which the poets foresaw a century ago in their drive back to mythic forms of organizing experience.
Well, here we are, a couple of archaic literate men, Gutenberg men, talking on the television. What is the audience getting from this? Is it listening to what we're saying, or is it feeling the impact of a new electric medium?
There is a book called Is Anybody Listening? It's what worries the advertising man a great deal. The idea of feedback, of being involved in one's, participating in one's own audience participation is a natural product of this circuitry. Everything under electric conditions is looped to become folded over into yourself, into your image of yourself changes completely.
In your other books, the more recent one where you, Understanding Media, where you go into all this, you use as a kind of slogan, I think, the expression, the medium is the message. Would you like to illuminate that?
I think it is more satisfactory to say that any medium, be it radio or be it wheel, tends to create a completely new human environment. The human environment is, as such, tends to have a kind of invisible character about it. The unawareness of the environmental is compensated for by some attention to the content of the environment. The environment as merely a set of ground rules and as a kind of overall enveloping force gets very little recognition as a form, except from the artist. I think our arts, if you look at them in this connection, do throw quite a lot of light on environments. The artist is usually engaged in somewhat excitedly explaining to people the character of new environments and new strategies of culture necessary to cope with them. Blake is an extreme case of a man who was absolutely panicked by the kind of new environment that he saw forming around him under the auspices of Newton and Locke and industrialism. He thought it was going to smash the unity of the imaginative and sensory life all to bits. But the artist, what he was insisting upon in his own lifetime became quite a popular and widespread movement later on.
Can I return to television? Because here we are, where whoever's listening to us is also undergoing the impact of television at the moment. On your view, they're all deceiving themselves insofar as they're paying attention to what we're saying, because what's going on is a medium which is in itself the image that they ought to be concerning themselves with.
The medium of television has many characteristics which have been unheeded. Mostly it is seen under the aspect of movie form. The TV camera does not have a shutter, does not take pictures. It handles, it picks up, as radio picks up, the TV camera picks up its environment, handles it, scans it, and the effect of the TV image is iconic in the sense that it shapes things by contours rather than by little snapshots.
Now, this is one of the words that you use a good deal, iconic. I think we better be clear what you mean by it.
I think of it, again, to tie in with Blake, his whole insistence upon the engraved, the highly patterned and highly sculptured forms and images. The iconic in that sense is very low in visual quality, very high in tactual quality. Active touch, not cutaneous, but active touch, as the psychologists.
You call television a tactile medium.
Iconic medium.
Okay.
Having much in common with the cartoon for which it is ideally suited, much more well suited than for pictures.
If you feel that we are going to have to come to terms, or we are coming to terms, much more than typographical man with this kind of instantaneous image.